a very hands-on view of what it is and what it's capable of. And then Brother Ala hopefully will provide a sort of a higher level view from executive leadership point of view about where it's going, how it changes our lives, and larger scale impact.
Jazakallah khair. And just a reminder, if we can have the children, Medina, Asia, this is mine's friends. Make sure you guys are not running around here. Jazakallah khair. We want to keep the noise free, inshallah, and respect our speakers. And Brother Hidayat is very humble, but he has, mashallah, a hand in so many Islamic projects in technology that you have no idea about, and he will not allow me to share with you. But if you knew, you would be amazed. That's all I'll say.
How do you romanize your name? Romanize it? How do you write your name? Hidayat.
All right, we'll have some time for questions, inshallah. Next, I wanted to let Brother Ala tell us a little bit about, I know we know him as our khatib and so many things, but from his work perspective, if you can introduce.
Assalamu alaikum, my name is Ala. I'm originally from Egypt. I didn't grow up there most of my life. I grew up moving around different countries. My father worked in the Foreign Service. And I studied engineering like Brother Hidayat. I studied computer engineering and I studied communications engineering. And I work right now at Uber running the AI solutions team. So I have a sales team, a technical sales team, and an engineering team. I just got back last night, late at night, yelling at the engineering team in the Bay Area, but that's another story. So that's what I do.
Barakallahu feekum. So let's start from the beginning, which is understanding what AI is. Now, this is not my topic of thing, but I'm interested in it as a lay person. It's not, my topic, but my understanding of AI, I was talking to Hidayat about it, is, maybe starting about 6-7 years ago, when you type on your keyboard, there was a keyboard called Swift Key. They still have it, I think. But what it did was, if you typed, it would predict your next word based on your history. So as you typed, so it knew all the inputs of everything that you put in, and then the output it would give you is what is the next word. So that was essentially pattern recognition. And that was my understanding of how this all works. And then once you put a lot of data behind it, we get the AI that we have today. But that's my, again, very layperson understanding. And Brother Hidayat, you're probably laughing inside about what that is. But that's my understanding of it. You can tell me more about how this works and what are the patterns and the inputs that create this thing.
So what is known as AI today, back when I was doing a PhD, back, like I said, 10 years ago, we called it machine learning. And when we called it machine learning, it was because we taught machines to do things that typically human beings are capable of. So things involving perception, things involving things like problem solving or reasoning or even visual understanding or audio understanding. And so when we developed systems that could do these sorts of things, we said this was machine learning or this was artificial intelligence. Yeah, they can't find the cable though. So I'm hoping the cable shows up soon. And then, yeah. So the example that you mentioned, alhamdulillah. Okay, so I have some visual aid, which, okay, so the example that you mentioned, the really early example of predictive text through,
Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, yeah, so I just have a few slides as props. I'm not doing a presentation, I'm not doing a slideshow, but if there's something in my slides that answers Imam Adam's question, I'll pull it up. So that's not what I'm trying to do here. Well, I suppose, okay. Yeah, so when it comes to predictive text, for example, that's a really early example of learning from patterns. So our phones, our dictionaries, they were fed examples of what letters come after which other letters. So if you see the previous 2 or 3 letters, typically, what do people type next? What's the 4th letter? What's the 5th letter? And so they were able to predict the next one based on what they'd seen in the past. Now this paradigm of predicting something based on what you've seen in the past, this underpins machine learning. This underpins artificial intelligence. And this is what even the most advanced generative AI systems you see today do. Based on what they've seen in the past, they predict the future. Now, there's different levels. So predictive text on your T9 keyboard on your flip phone is worlds away from generating videos based on a one-sentence prompt that you give your favorite AI assistant. But like I said, so the underpinning is the same. Now, we had machine learning systems that did really well in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. We were able to do things like movie recommendations. We were able to do things like understanding speech, transcribing speech from audio to text. We were able to do a lot of things very, very well. Predictions in the industry, the movie example keeps coming up because Netflix had a very famous challenge. What else did we do very well?
YouTube algorithm, social media.
Video recommendations at YouTube, your Amazon recommendations. How does Amazon know exactly what you want to buy next? This stuff was prevalent 15 years ago. And then, so AI is when we develop systems that are capable of doing some of the things that human beings are capable of doing. Reasoning, problem solving, some level of understanding, hearing, seeing, right? So that's what AI is. I don't know if you asked me about AGI.
No,
You did not?
yet.
Okay. We don't know what AGI is.
That's coming up. So can you explain to us kind of how are these models, so we understand there to be a model and it's trained. So what is this training? Can you talk a little bit about that? I once watched a video on neural networks that essentially you give it the question and then you give it the answer that you want and then it's finding out how to get to the answer by itself. That's my understanding, but maybe you can expand on this and kind of explain it in more detail in a way that we can understand.
So I won't get into the weeds really, but you asked me about training. So, in my previous answer, I mentioned that they look at a lot of past data and then they predict, or they make a prediction about something in the future. So what word comes next? What picture comes next? What image should I generate next? What recommendation should I give next, right? So that process of figuring out how to predict something based on what you've seen in the past, that process is called training. And what that involves is ingesting a large amount of data. Now, the main way this is done today is through something called neural networks, very deep neural networks. And again, this is not technical talk, so I'm not going to get into it. But a neural network is a structure that takes in some sort of input that you've made numerical. You've made it a series of numerical values. So you take some text and you have some way of turning it into numbers. You take some situation, you take a picture, you take a question, whatever you can think of. You have some way of turning it into a series of numbers. And you take that input, which is a series of numbers, and you pass it through a neural network. And what that really just means is that you're taking those numbers and you're multiplying them by a set of weights, you're doing a bunch of additions and multiplications and additions and multiplications and additions, and you're doing this many, 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 many times until you end up at an answer. So that's what a neural network is. It's just a set of weights that take an input, that do a series of multiplications and additions, and then come up with another output vector, which is again a series of numbers that you have to interpret again. So whether it's an image, whether it's a word, whether it's a video, whether it's a prediction about an image. So that's a very rough idea of how these neural networks work. So in the picture you see on the screen, there's something that has 4 variables, which means it has 4 sort of inputs that might represent a single thing, and then you kind of push it through the network, multiplications, additions, until you get, in this case, 3 outputs, which correspond to some sort of classification. How do you train them? Again, this is not a mathematical talk. I'm not going to talk about the math, but the way that you train them is that you take a large amount of data that you already know the answer for. So you have a bunch of images that, for example, are labeled by a radiologist at a hospital as cancerous images. And you have a bunch of images that are labeled by maybe the same radiologist as non-cancerous. And so what you do is you take that image, you turn it into a series of numbers, and you pass it through your network, and you see what it says. If it gives you the correct result, that is cancerous or non-cancerous, based on whatever the image was, you leave the weights as they are. If they're incorrect, if your network gives you the incorrect answer, you go back and you make tiny modifications to the weights so that it gives the correct answer next time. And then you pass another image through it, and you look at the answer. And if it's correct, you don't do anything to it. And if it's incorrect, then you go back and you make tiny modifications to the weights that's correct next time. And you do this for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of images until most of the time it gives you a correct answer. So when it sees a brand new image, a brand new X-ray or a brand new MRI or something, and you pass it through the network, it gives you the correct answer 99% of the time, 99.8% of the time. The more data you have, the better you can get it to do. So that's the training process. Does that kind of answer your question? And the same thing applies for predicting the next word. If you want to create something that generates the next word of a story, of a poem, then it's the same thing. You feed it billions of text documents. And then it looks at whatever it's seen in the past, whatever the paragraph says up until that point, and it kind of makes a prediction about what should the next word be.
So it's not thinking, but it's predicting. Because sometimes when you say artificial intelligence, when you usually hear that word, you're thinking, oh, this is a thinking object. But it's not thinking, it's just predicting. But the predicting is getting so good that it seems like thinking. Is that?
Sure.
You're smiling for some reason. Yeah, maybe you need another mic here. Oh, let me turn it on. Yeah,
So the reason I'm smiling is because thinking is a philosophical topic.
Okay.
How do you define thinking? And I don't want to get into that because we'll be here all night. But in a way, our brains are also chemically processing information, right? What we call thinking in our brain is also really a series of neurons firing off activations and fetching information and processing it.
So we're also predicting?
I don't want to wade into a philosophical debate.
Okay, go ahead.
So when we say the neural networks are predicting or thinking, they're doing a lot behind the scenes, right? So when you ask a question and you see it reasoning, right? Sometimes in the more modern the more modern AI assistants, you can kind of see it thinking. Okay, so I was asked this, so that means I should do this. So I need to go look this up. You can kind of see that thought process, right? It's doing a lot of these predictions. It's doing a lot of this pushing through the neural network. It's doing tens of them, hundreds of them, thousands of them, millions of them in those seconds as you see it processing. So it's I don't know how to differentiate between prediction and thinking, but in the end, it's a prediction, right? And the paradigm that we see all of these modern chatbots and AI systems working through, they're called next token prediction. That's the paradigm through which they're working. So they look at a bunch of tokens, which are words or parts of words, and they predict the next token prediction. That's what they're doing. If it looks like thinking, if it feels like thinking, you can call it thinking. But I don't know if you mean that thinking has a sort of philosophical viewpoint to it. Like, does it mean that it's human?
No, I'm not thinking about philosophical. I'm thinking about the movie Terminator, right? Where the intelligence, it goes crazy, and now it's sending Arnold Schwarzenegger to kill you, right?
I was hoping you'd bring that.
Where the intelligence and it's become a mind of its own. And my understanding is that's what we call artificial general intelligence, AGI. And that is where it becomes separate from us, where we're no longer telling it what to do, but it's an intelligence on its own. It has its own consciousness, motivations, needs, wants, desires. You know, take those words as you will. You're smiling again, okay? But how is that different from what Terminator, Skynet?
So I think when you have some distance from these concepts, they're very well defined. So in the 80s, we didn't really have AI, right? So it was kind of easy to see them as it's very far away, and AI will do this, and AI will do that, and once AI arrives, it'll be capable of this. It was very easy to formulate those things. But now that AI is here, and maybe AGI is here or very close, suddenly what we define as capabilities of AI and AGI become very nebulous. So even 10 years ago, 20 years,
What's nebulous?
just very vague. They're blobby, they're ill-defined, ill-formed. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you would ask somebody, how do I know when AI is here? They'd say it has to pass the Turing test. What's the Turing test? And so the Turing test is when, suppose you're talking to somebody or something, and there's a curtain between you and them. Or suppose you can only type with them, okay? And you don't know if behind that curtain is a human being or a machine. The Turing test is when you are unable to distinguish if it's a person or a machine. So if a machine is able to pass that test, where a human being is unable to tell whether they're talking with a machine or a human being, that's said to have passed the Turing test. This was a very clear definition 10 years ago, 20 years ago. But today, you ask somebody, how do you define the Turing test? Does ChatGPT pass it? Does Claude pass it? Does Gemini pass it? And suddenly, we don't know. We don't know how to exactly define the Turing test. It seems like it passes it, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe it failed on something as simple as counting the number of R's in the word strawberry. Same thing with AGI. So we said AI is something that does tasks that typically require human beings. Things like perception, hearing, seeing, reasoning. AGI, artificial general intelligence, again, when we didn't know what it was, when we were not close to it, we said AGI was something that could do things at the level that human beings could do. Many things. We didn't define what things. We didn't define how good it does it. But 20 years ago, we didn't have to, because we weren't even close. But now we're close. And suddenly, again, the definition falls apart. So now we don't know how to define AGI. Does it mean that it can drive a car as good as a human being? Does it mean that it is able to do surgeries? Does it mean that it's able to come up with movies? We haven't defined this. And so the closer we get to it, the definition kind of falls apart. And then we haven't defined whether it's able to do them at an expert level, at the average level. We haven't defined whether it does everything that a human being does or some things that a human being does. We haven't defined these things. And so today, there's AI assistants that can do some things at the level of an expert human being, or better. But the same thing will fall apart at something that a 5-year-old can do. So it's confusing.
One of the things, I think, when I think of AI and the people that work in AI, I think, wow, these guys are like, it's insane. How did they do all this? Well, how does it even work? But then in our conversation, essentially you admitted that that you came about this, or the industry came about this on accident, essentially. That they weren't anticipating that it would work like this, but that it just started working like this. Can you explain a little bit about that?
I wouldn't say on accident. So neural networks have been around for a very long time, right? 60s, 70s. They kind of went through something called an AI winter in the 80s and 90s, where there wasn't a lot of research done into them. And then they made a resurgence in the late 2000s, early 2010s, and then up until now. So we kind of always knew that in order to do machine learning, to do prediction, we needed things like neural networks. And we follow the same methodology that we followed with all the other architectures, right? We trained it, we saw it make predictions, we went back, we refined it, and then made predictions again. Now, what I meant about things coming across as surprises or accidents, we learned, and we didn't expect this to happen at this level. When we made the networks larger and larger, when we fed them more and more data, there were several...
Like how much data?
All the data that we have digitized today, practically.
So the whole internet.
The whole internet. Everything that we have digitized today is very likely fed into ChatGPT. Very likely. We don't know because they won't release the data set, but it's very likely. And these are huge networks. They have hundreds of millions of parameters, maybe even billions of parameters.
What's a parameter?
These weights. So when I said that you push data through the network, there's these weights that you multiply and add and multiply and add. I have a slide about scale. Right, yeah. So the largest networks today have on the order of billions of parameters. We think, again, they won't release the exact numbers. Llama and, well, some of them are open source, some of them aren't, but we don't really know a whole lot about what OpenAI uses to train their parameters. So these are estimates for GPT-4. When we kept making them bigger and bigger and feeding them more and more data, we saw
So
these things.
from this slide, what
Yeah.
I'm looking at is for 5 to 6 months,
Yeah.
10,000 GPUs, which
Yeah.
is graphics chips,
Yes.
each running 300 trillion, quadrillion. Okay, so many zeros. I don't even know what.
Yeah, 300 quadrillion.
300 quadrillion multiplications.
No, trillion. You're right, I'm sorry.
300. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'm better than the scientists at zeros. 300 trillion multiplications per second, times 10,000, times 5 to 6 months. So that's a lot.
That, yeah.
We're going to move on to impact,
We're not
inshallah.
gonna
We're
talk
just
about that.
understanding what it is, inshallah. Yeah. Barakallahu feek. So let's not talk up for everyone. Alhamdulillah, we have many different people here. I see lots of people in the cloud and AI industry here. So let's not underestimate why people are here. And we are moving on very soon, inshallah, to the impact part with Brother Ala, inshallah. But don't worry, inshallah. Please be patient. Jazakallah khair. So we're trying to have a general audience. It's hard to keep everyone happy. It's something that's not possible. But we're getting there, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. We're trying our best, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
So to wrap it up really quickly, a lot of what we see as capabilities of these artificial assistants today, we didn't expect them to happen. We call them emergent properties. They kind of emerged out of the architecture, and we didn't. A lot of the people, even the ones that trained ChatGPT, GPT-2, GPT-3, GPT-4, they were surprised by how good it was. Like, you talk to senior people in the field, and they're like, how is it generating code? How is it correct so much of the time? And these emergent properties were surprising to the top scientists in the field, the top researchers working on these bleeding edge architectures. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. So let's move on, inshallah, to the impact on our lives, which is what many of us are waiting for to hear from. Now that we have some understanding, and honestly, Hidayat was just answering my questions, so thank you. Brother Ala, let's start first with how is AI changing in the past 3 years? How has it changed the way you work? Let's start with work.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me? Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala, amma ba'd.
Or tell us what you thought about all this.
No, this was great. This is great, mashallah. La quwwata illa billah. It's great to have so many, mashallah, experts and brilliant scientists in the community. So maybe let's take a step back, applying what Brother Hidayat just said and what the brother just asked. Applications of AI, and even if you didn't understand what Brother Hidayat just said, we'll make it super simple. Just representing where I work, how many people have used Uber before? Maybe shout out some people have never used Uber, and okay. So when you get the little app and you fire it up and you go, I need a car, how it maps out where you are and the recent drivers around it is actually done through AI. That's just one example. It's got a ton of data on who's driving, geolocation services, oh, this person here, this person here, and then it gives you options. So that's AI. Okay. And then the driver comes up, you select the Uber Comfort or Black, and they come and they pick you up, right? You're now in the car. AI knows you're in the car, and there's a safety mechanism that now comes around you. Like, hey, put on your seatbelt. Hey, this and this and that. Hey, actually also uses AI. It makes it easy for you and easy for the driver. And then it drops you off, and it calculates the dollar amount for the route. That's also done through AI, because it uses pricing based on where you are, the distance you're going to travel, is it peak time or is it off season or whatever, and then it gives you the price, right? And then you get out of the car. How many people have not been happy with the ride? It's okay, right? 4 people? That's it? Okay.
You're doing a good job.
Okay. So when you're unhappy with your ride, there's a little option in the app, in case you don't know, to say, hey, I'm not happy with my ride. Has anyone ever used that? Yeah. Okay, great. So when you say I'm not happy with your ride, a little conversational agent comes up. Says, hey, why aren't you happy with your ride? Was it the driver? Did they not take a shower? Was it too expensive? Did they, and it gives you these options. You're like, yeah, it's whatever. It was the cost, or it was the money, or they didn't say hi to me when they welcomed me, or they gave me one price and I was charged another. That's AI. And then the AI has parameters to say, let's just make this up. I actually don't know what it is. If it's like between X and Y, just give them a credit. Right? Just give them a credit. It has to until your drive is over, until your ride is over. Otherwise, it's going to escalate to an actual human being. By the way, rarely does it go to a human being. That's all done through a machine. Make sense? So that's a good application of what AI is today. I'm just giving that. I come up with 50 other examples. I'm going to give you the breakdown of the industry to make it super simple, and then we'll tie it a little bit to Dean. Is that okay? Okay. So the very simple breakdown of the industry is there's 3 key components of AI that you need. The first one is the computer. What's that called today? There's a name for it. Starts with an N, and then has a V. NVIDIA. That's the computer. So for all intents and purposes, all the AI stuff that runs is called NVIDIA. Let's just call it that. That's why, anyone buy NVIDIA stock recently? Okay, so like that will continue to go up. Don't take that from me as a piece of financial advice. That's the big disclaimer at the beginning. And I don't know if the brownies have nuts or not. So if you're allergic, you can't have the brownies. But so that's the computer that is used to run AI. Then there's what Brother Hidayat was talking about, which people call the algorithm or the program, right? So what are examples of that? Has anyone ever used a thing called ChatGPT? That's the program, okay? Or Anthropic or Gemini. That's the actual program. So you go in and you type stuff and it gives you a response. But by the way, Brother Adam was just asking, and by the way, your example on text and like spelling, that's a great example of AI of the past. That's actually a terrific example of that. ChatGPT was trained on, fill in the blank, one word, text. It was trained on text. So it read the internet. ChatGPT read the internet. That's the model. And ChatGPT, when it read the internet, and you asked it a question about, some book that Isaac Asimov wrote called I, Robot, it will bring you that text because it read it on the internet. If it was available on the internet, that's what it's coming back with in general. Obviously, it got more sophisticated over time. The time when it really got sophisticated is when it started to solve exams on its own. So by the time it got to Algebra 2 in school, now it's actually starting to solve problems. It's not just giving you text back on the internet. But that's the program. So the first thing in NVIDIA, the second thing is the program. The third thing is what? Brother Hidayat spoke about it a bunch of times. The what? The data. The data is the fuel that powers 1 and 2.
So actually the order of sequences, if I was drawing this on a diagram, the data feeds the model, which runs on the computer, and the computer is sometimes called cloud services, which gives you the results. If you have bad data, it gives you bad results. Make sense? That's how it works. That's basically what it is. Can we talk about Islam? Or do you want to?
You don't have to talk about it.
Okay. So let's talk about us as Muslims and what that means to us. So I'll just make 3 or 4 points about that. The first point that I'll make is this is an ummah of knowledge. We are not an ummah of superstition. We're not an ummah of make-believe. We are an ummah of knowledge. And the first ayat that were revealed to the Prophet ﷺ were اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. Over time, our history and our background and our culture is that Muslims were the innovators. Muslims were the innovators. The Muslims in Europe are the ones that taught the Europeans the concept of a paved road and a garden, what we call today a public park. That's a Muslim invention. And lighting the roads at night and having field hospitals. The Muslims had mobile field hospitals centuries ago. Centuries ago, not even in the construct of a building like you have where you have to go to a physical location. They had mobile hospitals. The concept of a mail system where I want to deliver a message to brother Adam who lives in Indonesia and I'm somewhere in Mecca and getting that connected, that's a Muslim invention. So we have not just been an ummah of innovation, we have been an ummah of positive contribution, and we have been an ummah of positive application of those contributions. Who came up with optics and algebra, the fundamentals of which AI is built on, and algorithms, and everything that you see in modern human, what eventually caused what we call the European Renaissance. Those Europeans are the ones that migrated to America. What effectively activated the European Renaissance were the Muslims that lived in Europe, the Andalusian dynasty and so forth that were in Spain for 800 years, and the ones that lived in Sicily, and that's what fired up the European Revolution. So we are an ummah of knowledge and an application of constructive knowledge at that matter. The third thing that I'll just say about relevant to AI here, and this is where the dangers come in, especially related to AGI that Sheikh Adam was just talking about, which is we're an ummah of the application of sciences and knowledge for the betterment of humankind with conscience. When we build things with conscience. And what's happening nowadays in the trends that we see is that there is no conscience in what's being built. Does anyone work for a technology company, especially related to maybe the AI field or software or cloud services or anything? Does anyone in those companies that you work, have you heard of the term responsible AI? Has anyone heard that term? Like the CEO goes up and goes, we're building, we're innovating, and we have these fundamental five things, and responsible AI is number 5. No one can define what that means today. No one can define what that is. But by the way, I've been hearing that for the last 12 years of my career across 4 different companies. No one can tell you what that means. There are no standards for what that means. And I would argue if there were standards being built, the Band-Aid has now just been ripped off. Like it doesn't even exist anymore. Drones killing people happens through AI. That's through AI. Oh, we think that that's a bad guy, right? So let's just take them out. So this idea of us as Muslims in a community applying AI means we apply it with a level of consciousness about what's haram and halal, what's permissible and not permissible. By the way, this is no different to the television set. When we watch TV, you can watch halal, good things on the television, how to plant your own garden in the house, and you can watch haram things on television. You're required to watch the halal things and leave the haram things. Right? These are just some of the applications. Sorry, I went over. Go ahead.
No, you didn't go over. There's no time limit other than salah. That's the only time limit we have. Jazakallah khair. I think you've mentioned so many important things. One of the questions I have for you is, how does AI already, and how will it continue to impact? And Brother Hidayat, open to you as well if you want to comment on this. Our community life. So, as an example, I used ChatGPT. I said, let me try generating a khutbah. Don't worry. And what's interesting, I used a unique topic, and so it spit out, and I said, this seems familiar. okay? And it gave me a link. The link was to my website of my transcription of my khutbah. I have a screenshot I can show you. I was like, what is going on?
You're famous.
So it was telling me my khutbah back to me. A plagiarism of myself.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you have the camera on?
Did I have the camera on? I don't know. I said I'm closing this for today. Khalas. So how is it going to impact our masjid, our community?
Yeah.
I mean, it's already happening.
It's already happening. So let's talk about that. Like any technology that's new in the market, that's being applied, there's a sense of optimism and fear, and a constant in the economies we live in, a constant sense. Like if I were on board writing this out, I'd draw a big circle around it, and just put a bunch of dollar signs, right? So not unlike, let's take an example, the calculator when it came out, I don't know if accountants freaked out at the time or not, but it became a helpful tool. Calculators in general are a helpful tool. This could also be a helpful tool. And so the thing that is repeated in the industry nowadays that I think is true, which is if you take a graduate that's studying computer science, no graduate, by the way, studying computer science, anyone here studying computer science? You're actually coding? MashaAllah, when are you guys going to graduate? Okay. Have you used OpenAI, ChatGPT? Have you guys used Anthropic and looked at that? Okay, hurry up and graduate, right? So, but on a serious note, the difference between a graduate that's used an AI and a graduate that hasn't is going to be pretty big. That'll make the difference between the accountant that knows how to use and is competent at the calculator versus the accountant that's still doing multiplication tables and little logarithmic books and so forth. That's the general truth.
Versus using Excel.
Versus?
Versus the guy that uses Excel.
That's right. Versus someone that uses Excel and so on and so forth. So that'll just continue to evolve. And I would argue that statement that I just made will apply to every single industry. By the way, I'm mentioning computer science graduates in particular. In fact, I was just talking about that today in another forum. If you look at the recent Microsoft layoffs, just to take something right out of our community that's actually impacted some people within our community, not for the first time, but for the first time in modern history of layoffs, there's sort of a pecking order that companies go through when they lay people off. A pecking order of job category. I'm not talking about performance. The first pecking order tends to be what people call shared functions. So shared functions are like HR and accounting and legal, right? That's one level. The next level up is sales and marketing. And then the third level up is engineering. If you look at the 3%, that's 6,000 people that just got cut, more than 60% of them are in engineering for the first time ever. So the pecking order is now starting to shift. Now that shift that the reasoning that they gave is because they're getting more efficiency at coding from AI. And that's actually a reality. That's a reality, right? So that'll continue. I'm not suggesting continue to lay people off, inshallah. Like that advancement that drives more efficiency is something that is a function of society. Let me now marry that to Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we all know the surah, speaks about this notion of human beings' boundless thirst and hunger for wealth and power and fame and efficiency and optimization. What's the surah called? Alhaakum at-takathur. Alhaakum at-takathur. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reflecting on. You have boundless, insatiable appetite for more and more and more. Now, our deen teaches us to curb that and to put that under control. But now that I can advance AI and get rid of half the team, I can make more money. Next year, I'm going to go from 15% efficiency to 25% efficiency, and by 2030, I'm going to optimize for 30% efficiency. Why do we need drivers? We should just have machines and robots. What Brother Adam was saying, Brother Daz was saying about operations, 100% true. If you look at Siemens, one of the customers we do work with, Siemens is reinventing the factory floor. Siemens is a large industrial company out of Germany. They make all kinds of things. They make, something as like a super simple microphone or a machine that does ABC, all the way to a very sophisticated robot that's got 8 arms that puts together parts of cars and machinery and cables and so forth. They're reinventing the factory floor in 3 dimensions to make it all robotic and AI enabled, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he says, أَلْهَاكُمُ التَّكَاثُرْ حَتَّى زُرْتُمُ الْمَقَابِرَ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, yes, you should definitely look for efficiency and learn and get better. There's nothing stopping you from improving yourself. However, don't let that get out of control. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he says, every human being, if every human being had a valley that was full of gold, a valley that was full of gold, they would not be satisfied until they had 7 more. And the only thing that fills the belly of the human being is dust and dirt. Dust and dirt. That's the only thing that will ever fill the belly of a human being. And what I'm trying to do is tie these advancements with AI, the efficiencies that we bring and the revenue that it generates, to bind ourselves in what it means to be a conscientious community. A community that has a conscience. And so Brother Adam was saying, I love what you said at the beginning about terminate. So when you think about like this boundless thing where we start to talk about AGI. So what does AGI mean in one word? It means computers thinking for themselves. That's it. That's what AGI is. So you go from this, oh, look, I'm feeding it text. No, it can actually think for itself and make decisions for itself. There are armies around the world that are now building machines that will think for themselves. They're building airplanes, by the way, all military applications, that are thinking for themselves. I don't have to put human beings at risk anymore. I can give it a bunch of data that says, these things look like targets. Go out and have fun. When we bring it all back, we're like, is that really a good use of AI? So boundless AGI, if you watch anyone here watch science fiction? No? It's all haram. Okay, so boundless AGI in any movie ends really badly. It ends badly. I like to give the example, I'm joking, I like to give the example of this is the potential future of Ya'juj and Ma'juj showing up. Ya'juj and Ma'juj may be a machine, right? That gets up, that's all AGI driven, that just starts to kill human beings left and right. Right? In the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he says when Isa ﷺ comes down and he goes into the mountain with his followers after he's killed the Dajjal, they all die like a single human being. Right? He found the off switch. Right? But like those are I'm making this up, this and that, but like those are scenarios where things can get out of hand with how we think about AI.
Barakallahu feek. I read a study that they did at the University of Zurich. They went on Reddit, which is like an internet social media forum, and they went on a specific Reddit called Change My View. So human beings would post on there saying, change my view about this topic. And what they did was they tested AI on it. So the way they did it is they would read the full profile of the poster and understand who it is, what their interests are, everything. And then they would tell the AI to generate messages to change their view based on their profile, like so personalized. And how much more likely or less likely was it to change the view than a human being? It was 4 to 6 times more likely to change your view. Because you're open to changing your view, it was going to change your viewpoint more effectively than a human being could. Because it could read your whole history, find out who you are, what you are interested in, how you talk, how you like to be talked to, what inflames you, what calms you down, and then give you a direct message. Better than any human being could ever do. Faster than any human being could ever do. More accurate than any human being could do. And they got shut down. Reddit said, we're going to do a lawsuit against the university for doing this. But the university said, look, this is we were just doing research. This is our test. And so you see how AI is being used. How should Muslims kind of navigate those that are working in the field? We saw AI being used now in surveillance, in propaganda, in warfare. Brother Hidayat, I would like to give it back to you as well. What are the red lines that you've kind of drawn out, or that you think that Muslims should be drawing about working on this kind of stuff? And how do you even know? How do you even know that you're even working on it? Because you become far removed. So can you speak to kind of your thinking on that?
It's a difficult question. I know that many people here have thought about it deeply because they also work in AI. and I've had conversations with many of you. I think for me personally, a red line is anything that causes any kind of harm. And like you said, it's difficult to predict because we're so far removed from the eventual application. And sometimes you might be involved in research. You might be involved in very basic research on neural networks that is then used by weapons companies and militaries and governments and so forth. But if there's an obvious application of your work to causing harm, however you want to define harm, for me, that would be the red line, and inshallah, I don't even come close to it, ever. But it's difficult. It's a very difficult thing that many of us are grappling with today.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question. So, actually, I'll replay a conversation that happened this morning. Your question is really a great question, and then you talked about our sister in Microsoft. Let me talk about our sister in Microsoft first, because she is truly one of the heroes of this ummah. She took a personal stance. She took a personal stance against something she thought was wrong, irrespective of whether or not that was going to impact her job. I'm sure she had a fantastic paying job. I'm sure she had a great career. And what she did was she voiced her concern out loud in the same way that the Quran tells us to, in the same way that the Prophet ﷺ says, where he says, if you see evil, you should fix it. You should change it with your hand. If you can't, then you should change it with your tongue. If you can't, change it with your heart. And that's the weakest of it. That's what she did. She changed it with her tongue. She did what she could. And inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of her. That's our fundamental belief as Muslims, is that when you give something up for the sake of Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you something better, right? If you work at a restaurant and they start to serve alcohol and you walk away, you're not going to be out of a job. Inshallah, you'll find something better, right? So one answer is to take a personal stance, and what Brother Hidayat, I concur with 100%, is that what do you know specifically to be true? And this is becoming a larger problem. Because sometimes you're told and sometimes you're not. Sometimes it's a guessing game and sometimes it isn't. And the example I was going to give you from today, I just came back from the Bay Area yesterday. We had a big customer meeting. And on my team, one of the things we do for AI is we do localization of up to 200 different languages. And we have some of the best experts of language localization in the world. So they can literally, we have enough human power to translate things into 200 different languages with a high degree of precision. A high degree of precision, right? And we had a project from a customer. I can't say the customer name, but I'll just say it's a church. And the church is not, it's a church, I'm going to give it up now, a church that is scientific, they claim to be scientific in nature. And when you read their books are like science fiction. So what they believe is the creed is like, their books are like science fiction and some science applications. And I didn't really think about it yesterday. And then this morning, this brother calls me up from the team. And he says to me, hey, do we have governance or bounds about that? I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, because we're translating the books. I was like, okay. And I didn't think much about the books. And he goes, what if one of the books goes to Egypt? What if one of the books goes to Saudi? And I started to think about that. And I won't go deeper into the conversation, but we do have to, some of the things you can fix with your hand, some of the things will come from a company policy. Like clearly, every company is going to be against racism. And we see, by the way, some of this as positive applications of AI. We're doing projects for some of the very large labs where they want prompt engineering, what's called prompt engineering. Ask a question in a certain way and figure out if the answer is racist, right? Or the question is asked in a certain way where it is a racist question, but the connotations aren't clear to the machine whether or not this has a racist connotation or not. A human being's got to figure that out, right? So those are positive applications of that, where you don't want that level of racism or categorization in any kind of way. But then there's these other applications that you don't always know about, like scanning images. And so I think for some of those, you just have to make your own personal decision on whether or not you want to go forward. You can sometimes ask to be taken off the project. I don't want to work on project A, I'm going to take project B. You can certainly apply for other jobs internally that may be open. You could leave the company on your own. I'm generally, the way I advise people is, operate with your conscience, what you feel is right. If you want to ask other people that can give you coaching, ask to be coached or ask specific questions, find out what the company guidelines are around that. But find your next thing before you do yourself self-harm. So even though, like I said, I gave this example of the sister, and like I said, no doubt she did the right thing. But in general, if you find yourself where you're cornered, find a way out, right, before burning the bridges, so to speak, right, before burning the bridges. Because I think it helps you, it helps the community more when there's a level of connection onto your next thing versus just making that stance, right? Today, my daughter came from UW, and she really told me a story that was just fascinating. I don't know if she's here or not. She dropped me off and I think bailed on the lecture. But today they had a thing at UW where the graduate students were presenting projects, right? So long as your thing was research and was interesting, they set it up apparently all throughout the university, and you had a little bit like when they were little and they had a science fair, and this is the volcano. It was one of those, except it was university students, and you got 15 to 20 minutes to speak. And the sister, a friend of hers, asked for a bunch of volunteers, and they were in a big room, and she said that the sister came with a bunch of quotes about the first UW stand against the bombing and the killing in Gaza through work and interviews of people in the US that were of Palestinian origin, and she broke down the data. She's like, she'd get basically a summary, what was like a 1-hour interview into like a 3-minute summary of what the lady said, or what the brother said, or what the man said. And she said when kids walked into that room with all the other projects going on, they literally left and they went straight to what the sister was presenting out of the background. And I just found that that's a positive application. By the way, she used AI for the data, etc. That's a positive application of some of those things, right? How are we giving the message in a smarter way?
Barakallahu feek, Jazakallah khair. Speaking of that, and you had mentioned that there was layoffs in the engineering for the first time. And a lot of our young people are studying this subject or something close to this subject. Hidayat, I'll start with you. What would you advise our youth or young professionals that are preparing for a career in this field? How should they change what they study? What should they study? Can you give some advice on that?
I'll start with a quote by Andrew Ng, who's one of the luminaries of the field. I wouldn't say that I agree with it 100%, but the spirit of it is I think, valuable for all of us. And he said, it's just one line, he said, AI will not replace human beings, but human beings that use AI will replace the ones that don't. There's some issues with that and how it plays out, but in general, the spirit of that I think is accurate. And so what that means for somebody in school today, in college today, starting out your careers, is that you need to be at the very top of your field. If you're average, if you're below average, yeah, the tasks that somebody would hire you to do and the level of competency that you would do them with, they can largely be automated through agents and agentic AI and the latest AI assistants. But people will always need somebody who knows the field, who knows the material so well that they can understand when the AI is going wrong. Because if you let AI do everything, it will make a lot of mistakes. There's companies that have folded because they went too far, too all in on AI, and they made mistakes. So I think a classic example is Air Canada said, you know what, we don't need human beings doing customer service anymore. We're going to let our AI chatbots handle everything. And then the AI chatbot, it just learned that it's really easy and really quick to just give everybody a refund, right? And that's what it did. And then Air Canada's like, wait, no, we can't do this anymore. There's companies that, this is actually really ironic. There's an AI company that said, you don't need to hire workers anymore, AI will do it. And they just went belly up because what they were able to deliver was not at the quality that companies needed. Maybe it was 80% there, maybe it was 90% there. But that last 10%, that last 1%, that last 0.1%, you need somebody who knows the material inside out. You're writing a history paper? Yeah, AI can do 99% of the work. But you gotta be there to read through it, and figure out that this is the wrong year, or this is the wrong lesson to learn from this particular historic incident or something. You need to know the material really well to catch those mistakes. There will always be a need for that. Again, this could be famous last words. Maybe tomorrow you'll have AGI that does it better than any of us. I'm talking about the field today. And so the only thing that I can tell you is you gotta be at the top of your field. You can't be skating through classes, letting ChatGPT do your essays, and then getting your degree and not even really learning anything. You gotta be the very top of what you do. And that's how you survive.
Allahu Akbar. Even when I ask it for Islamic things to generate, I'll find mistakes. Or I'll find, like you said, the wrong lesson is taken out. Like it thinks this is the lesson, but this is the real lesson. So 100%, you have to know your field. You have to know your references. You have to know your stuff while you're using this. Jazakallah khair. Brother Ala, what would be your advice to young people pursuing this field? And then we'll close with one last thing after that, inshallah.
So I've, over the last 50 years of whatever, of talking to our students and our, our children, our boys and girls that are still studying, even before AI showed up, by the way, I was a huge fan of highly recommending that people do double majors. I was a huge fan of that, even before this whole thing showed up. I think that just, by the way, this thing about AI now emphasizes that even more. At the rate of advance, so there's two things that are different about AI. One is it really is taking over jobs. And the second is the rate of advance is faster than anything that's happened in technology before. So when we sit there and we go, oh, Brother Adam's iPhone is more powerful than the NASA computer that launched the spaceship to the moon, which is 100% true. It took 40 years to get this. It took 40, 50 years to get to where we are today. AI is catching up much faster. So I'll tell you, for people studying software engineering, please shut your ears. Kidding. But some of those jobs will really go out of style very quickly. And so you should anchor yourself in having some kind of backup. By the way, it's not just, I'm not picking on software engineers. I'm talking about that because that's an obvious field where code generation just becomes something super automated. I mean, I can give you all kinds of geeky examples. Can I just give one geeky example? Does anyone here understand what Amazon Web Services is? AWS? Like they have these reference architectures. I used to work at AWS and I used to run architectural teams. And I'm not as technical as I used to be, but I went out of interest and I used one of those things just to talk about coding and engineering. And right. And I asked, and this wasn't even the best option to use at the time, but I used ChatGPT to create an architecture based on a description that I fed it through text. And it did. And then I said, use the most applicable architectural framework from the 52 that they had posted on site, and it did. And then I said, recreate it and use the latest technology that AWS has to optimize the solution and save me about 30% of my bill, and it did. Let me just tell you, from a person that has some experience in this field, this would have roughly taken 5 to 12 people, probably competent people, 10 to 12 days worth of work. We're talking about architectural level individuals. So now let's talk about the future of jobs. I'm personally an optimist that feels like humanity, this is my sense of that better level of optimism, humanity will always be above the machine. Unless we turn into Ya'juj, Ma'juj, and Terminator, that's a different story. But inshallah, humanity will be always above the machine. Just to give another example, in the industry today, this is something, again, that we're doing projects on. So doctors and surgeons. When surgeons do an operation, how many people here think that surgeons actually design the operation? Because I thought so. Turns out they don't, right? So if you're a surgeon and everyone's a specialist and they operate on this part of the body, let's just pick where my fingers are down to here, right? Whatever's in there, that's what they. Someone comes in with an ailment, right? There's already algorithms and machine learning code and images that have scanned this part of the human body 50 million times. And they go, this person could potentially have operation A, B, or C. Guess who decides on which operation A, B, or C is going to have? It's not the surgeon. It's the medical technician of the machinery that is made by the machine companies that take all these images. And they go, hey, surgeon, this person's got X, so you have the option of A, B, or C. And I pick B. What do you think? And the surgeon goes, yeah, B makes sense. Now, obviously, the surgeon has a lot more capability. This is now where the human being's important. In the middle of the surgery, if something happens and they have to intervene, the surgeon is going to be the one that does the intervention. By the way, it's a lot like a pilot. How many people think the pilot flies the plane? The pilot's there so that if you're sitting in the back, you're not terrified. They look at the cockpit and go, who's flying the plane? But there's a thing called autopilot where the pilots get in, they take off, and they switch that thing on. They could be eating pizza, doing push-ups, doing drinking, and not even looking at the window, right, of what's going on outside. And the plane is flying itself. Now, if you're on the plane and you saw that, you'd freak out. Hence, you need a pilot. But these things already happen. How many people have Teslas? Tesla people? What, only 2 brothers have Tesla? You guys have already dumped the Elon Musk thing? And how many people? It's haram now. How many people have Teslas with self-driving capability? Right? Like if you've ever been in one, it's truly a work of magic. I was in the car with a brother one time, and he's on I-5 or whatever, and he's going in the back, digging up his stuff. I'm like, whoa! And the thing drove itself. So we're getting to that point where, and by the way, there is a downside to it. Let's take the Islamic perspective. There's a major downside to it. In the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, you know what he says? He says, "Man faqru akhsha alaykum." He says, I'm not concerned for this ummah from being poor. I'm not suggesting being poor is a good thing, but the Prophet ﷺ says this. He says, I'm not afraid about you being poor. I'm actually afraid of the dunya opening its doors of wealth to you so that you compete in it, meaning in a negative manner. Back to alhaakum al-takathur. So you start to compete in a destructive way with each other, and so it destroys you in the same way that it destroyed previous nations. It destroyed you in the same way that it destroyed people. Part of that entering into a world of wealth where people are spending money in the billions.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
La ilaha illallah. So we'll, inshallah, we will have a Q&A after the salah. So we'll go ahead and break in just a second. Before I conclude right now, I just want to thank both of our speakers for sharing all their thoughts and all of their expertise. And I just want to, remind us that we have, mashallah, we're really we're able to be at the forefront of this, inshallah, as a community, more than any other community in the whole world, I'm telling you. Brother Hidayat himself, he's done programs in Chicago, in Dallas. They have to invite him over there. Sheikh Yasir Qadhi invited him over there to speak on this topic, right? But he's right here. Like, we have so many people, and he's not the only one. There's so many even in this audience right now. So we really have such an opportunity. We have so much strength, inshaAllah. You have no idea, or maybe you do have an idea. But really, alhamdulillah, we have the ability to really change this, inshaAllah, and to make this a force for good, and to make this a force for positivity, inshaAllah. So with that said, before we conclude, because I know some people might have to go, we're going to have, inshaAllah, a program where people can present their projects that they would like to do in this field. Normally it's called a hackathon. So we'll have an AI hackathon that we had last year. This year we're going to have it specifically for AI. Bring your projects, bring your ideas. We're going to bring, inshaAllah, brothers in our community that have done investments, that they will come and they will advise, inshaAllah. I'm not saying you're going to get an investment, but inshallah, I'm not going to hold them to that, but at least they will be able to advise. And if it's good, why not? We can have our own Shark Tank, of course, why not? And I think it's possible. Because we want, inshallah, Brother Muhammad, who did the presentation last week, he said we want a unicorn in our community, which is $1 billion company, right? We want that in our community. Then we don't have to worry about our new masjid. It'll be paid for, inshallah, right? We're going to get some equity from the masjid, inshallah. So this is something that's completely possible, inshallah, and we can do it, and we have the minds to do it. We have the expertise, and we can do it, inshallah, with your help. And we're going to have more of these, inshallah. So please come forward, inshallah, and let's talk and let's collaborate. Jazakumullah khair. Inshallah, we'll break for the salah now, and we'll have the Q&A for about 20 minutes after the salah. Both speakers have agreed. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى ألم يجدك يتيما فآوى ووجدك ضالا فهدى ووجدك عائلا فأغنى فأما اليتيم فلا تقهر وأما السائل فلا تنهر وأما بنعمة ربك فحدث. الله سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. الله. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inshallah, we'll continue our artificial intelligence program with a Q&A after the remaining salah. Also, tomorrow morning, MAPS Youth has a hike at 8 a.m. inshallah for the upperclassmen. And also on Monday, inshallah, we have our Golden Times program, which is for our seniors and our elders. So those of you that have grandparents at home, please bring them on Monday, inshallah, at 10:30. We have a program for the seniors, the men and the women. They can socialize, they eat food, they learn something new. It's a way for them to build connections in this community so that they're not isolated. So this is very important. There's even people who come to this program from, mashallah, Olympia. They bring their parents for this program. So on a Monday. So please join us, inshallah, at 10:30 there. And please bring your parents, inshallah. It's at 10:30, inshallah. Grandparents, inshallah, at 10:30 on Monday, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. We'll continue with the Q&A after the remaining sunnah. So, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I was just informed the MAPS Youth Hike is cancelled because of the weather, so they've postponed it. Jazakumullah khair. Okay, Bismillah. If we can all start taking a seat, inshallah. So then we'll try to have the Q&A and conclude by before 9:30, inshallah. So please, if everyone can take a seat, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. And we'll get started shortly, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair.
Get it with both hands.
You know,
Okay, inshallah. So we'll try to keep it to about 20 minutes, inshallah. So I asked just, I know we have a lot of people, mashallah, who might have questions. So I ask that you just keep it to 30 seconds, whatever the question or comment or what have you, inshallah. So we'll start, Brother Osama, since you asked me, I'll start with you. And then we'll go to the sisters as well. Is there any sisters who have a question? Who would like to go first? Okay, so Brother Osama, yes.
Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. If I see Brother Ala, who says have a lot of time in computer, in 20 years or something, I started my computer in 1985, before most of the people here was born. I see, if you look at I lived the old time of the crucial time of technology. When the computer started, we had the same discussion I have right now as we're talking about the AI. The computer will take over the workforce. People are going to be without work, and we can repeat the same word Brother Hidayah said. The person with a computer is going to do the same job better than a person without computer. It's the same level of discussion we went to when the internet started. Don't get to the internet, don't like you kids to go to the internet. It has a lot of pornography, a lot of bad things, but exactly the same thing until people understand that no, the internet is the way to go. They have a lot of research, they can go to books, they can understand a lot of stuff, get more information, all this kind of stuff. AI right now, it's here to stay. And a person with AI knowledge and implementing the AI in his field or any company is much better than a person without it, as a Brother Hidayah said. Even in education, I attended a session in Egypt in Ma'arad al-Kitab, was an exhibition of books in Egypt, where some scholar, some education person was challenging to prevent AI from intervening in the school. And I couldn't stay, and so I told them, let me tell you what the AI can do in education. I even just last week I sent a list to my son Akram for Raya School for what kind of tools they can use for the kids using AI tutoring. It's gonna help the kids and the teacher. Imagine right now we are the teacher will teach the class the same level, but the AI can improve the guy who have better information in math, or have a challenge in LA, he can language art, he can improve him, and the teacher will be the guidance for them to help. It will help the educator and the student. Without that, we're gonna get behind. So please, we can implement the AI the right way. Yes, there is a lot of mistakes coming in from the AI, a lot of wrong answers. It's not really a lot. It's, you can say 10% based on my study there. But this is require the big organization and universities and countries, Islamic countries specifically, to intervene and to correct the data. AI doesn't create a wrong answer. The data is the wrong answer. And you can correct me if the bad. So if we have a research who can crawl the web and go correct the bad information there, we will get better and better AI, especially from an Islamic point of view. This is my 2 comments.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. And I will add to that what you said, Brother Osama, that even in our Quran memorization class, we found that there's more kids, more students, than there is the teacher that's qualified to teach the class. So we've made a plan to incorporate an AI that will listen to the hifz, the review at least, not the new, but at least the review, and the students can read it, check their mistakes, and then go to the teacher once they are more ready. Because sometimes the student comes with lots of mistakes, and then they get sent back, and they come back. So this is something we want to implement in even our Quran classes, possible, inshallah. So I'll go to the sister, inshallah. Is there any 10-year-old boys here? 11-year-old? Ta'ala habibi. Your dad's saying no. Your dad's saying you have to come. Come on. Jazakallah khair. Takbir.
Allahu Akbar.
MashaAllah. Ta'ala, ta'ala. All right, you're my volunteer. Can you take the microphone to the sister there in the back?
Assalamualaikum. Okay, I have a question. So all of these advances of AI, all the privileges, all the good things about it, and obviously there's cons also. So my question is like, so how fast are we like protecting our data, our own privacy, since we like, the AI is so advanced that we cannot even catch up, I think. Even in healthcare, there's already like, you can scan your face, as I was told in a conference that I went to, and they can diagnose what disease you have already. And so with all of, even in China, they already have a robot hospital and whatnot. So what about our privacy? How are we, is there any consideration about that? Are we thinking about it? And then, like, I feel like there's no code of standard or ethics in computer science or anything, because you just have to think about, like, is this good or is this bad for the person? Is there any harm or self-harm? Not like in other fields where you have a code of ethics that you have to go by or standards of care or something. So I just want to ask that, because I've been hearing it's just like what the brother was saying, yeah, if you think that is a self-harm, then it's bad. So am I correct or
Yeah.
not? I'm sorry.
Jazakallah khair, sister. So the question is about two things. Number one, it's about privacy. And I think you said responsible, or you said code of conduct. And both elements are 100% true. So on a privacy level, how many people recently flew through Seattle Airport? How many people got through customs and immigration in about 5 minutes? How did they do that? By taking a picture of your face. So my personal opinion about that is more and more that's getting thrown out the window. I'm not suggesting it's right, I'm just explaining what's going on. If you take a step back, even before AI, and you think about social media, the invention of Facebook and others, they were already, you were the product. You and I were the product. Social media as an invention, what did they actually monetize? They monetized the human being. That's what they, for the first time ever in human history, the human being was the product. So if I know what the product wants, and someone wants to see videos of demonstrations of Gaza, they'll show you videos of demonstrations of Gaza. If someone is interested in sports cars, they'll show you pictures of sports cars. You became the product, right? And the more that became a thing, even Google searches, you became the product, right? That's now being applied in security measures. It's being applied in more dangerous ways. It's being applied in the occupied territories to find like the intonations of voice and the color of the face and how nervous someone is and so on and so forth. So my unfortunate answer is that I feel like that is being parked out the window. And then your second question about code of conduct, while many companies claim it, my personal observation, even from advising startups and looking at boards and so on, even legal implications, there's nothing that really enforces that. You know, and the most recent truth is the sister that complained at Microsoft, and it's true, they use it for military purposes to kill people. Well, how is that code of conduct? How is that code of conduct, right? So there isn't a defining, enforceable government body that says this is the code of conduct for AI. There isn't a government body that holds companies accountable when that code of conduct is broken, and there are no penalties for any of the above. I would argue in the current administration in the US, that's spoken about even less and less. And if you're following the news, one of the first things he said was, we're actually not going to hamper any of these companies. We're going to make them go faster. What he's really saying is, we're going to take away any regulations that are aligned to the two things that you mentioned, the privacy issue and the code of conduct issue. So I don't have a great answer for it. And even though they talk about PII and HIPAA and so on and so forth, yes, that's true to some extent, but it's not, because AI is based on data.
All right, Barakallahu Fik. Thank you, sister. I'll just take, I'm going to have to do eeny, meeny, miny, mo, I think. Let's say brother in the back, yes. If you can speak loudly or you can bring you the mic. Where'd my volunteer go? Oh, he's there. He's already busy. He's already active. MashaAllah. He's good son, MashaAllah. May Allah reward him and his father.
Assalamu alaikum. You mentioned that AI is eventually going to make its way into more than just the software industry. What would you say should people who are not specifically software should try to learn to stay ahead of the game and be able to use AI that are not software?
So I think let me give you a real world example, and I might geek out for a second. Software engineers, raise your hand. Don't be shy. Bismillah, halal job, alhamdulillah. Okay, good. People that are in accounting, raise your job. No, we have no accountants. Like, yeah, you're a little bit like, I know it's a boring job, but I didn't expect zero. So let's pretend there's an accountant that raised their hand. Now, my follow-up question to the accountant would be, does the accountant know Excel? What would the answer to that be? It should be yes, if they're a competent accountant. My follow-up question to the accountant would be, does the accountant know a little bit of Python? You know what Python is? It's a simple programming language. Okay. Let's now compare the two, and I'll get your question. So the developer, the software engineer, is going to write a bunch of code to do data analytics on an engine. That's the software-minded way of thinking. And you could replace that through AI, arguably. The accountant, on the other hand, understands the accounting principles that they're working with. Let's say it's a tax return or whatever. They're very sophisticated at the use of Excel, probably more so than the software engineer. So that's two advantages. And then the third one may be that they know a little bit of Python, which means that they can get really sophisticated in Excel, inject Python scripts and formulas, and go out and start to get data from open source stuff on the internet to help whatever building the business plan for the company and so on and so forth. So I'm giving you those two dimensions because even if you're not in the world of software engineering, it's going to catch up with you at some point in time. It's already happening in accounting, it's happening in law, it's happening in medicine, it's happening in all kinds of fields where they're taking the specialization and they're making it applicable to AI. If anyone has ever heard, don't go look this up, but there's people that have built front ends on an enormous amount of ChatGPT type of LLMs, and they are specialized. So there's now LLMs specialized in accounting, and there's now LLMs specialized in law, and that'll catch up to almost every industry. So you'll be sitting there doing your job, let's say you're an aeronautics engineer, you'll have the aeronautics engineering LLM. I want to build a wing with these dimensions that carries this much fuel, fits on a 737, and takes me from Seattle to Japan in 7 hours. What does that look like? You have to have the knowledge of the engineering that you're coming with, and at the same time be able to use the tool, right? And so that's where I think the marriage has to exist, right?
I would add one thing, which is use it, right? Use it. Instead of going on Google to do your searches, use the AI and see what the difference is, compare it. We had our last AI session last year with Brother Abdul Aziz, and he took, a lot of you were here, he took us through the different AIs and he showed us how to use it. So if you have people in your family who know how to use it, ask them, use it for the things in your life and just see it. Get the hands-on experience. I can probably claim I was probably the first imam to use it. I used it on the first day. So, but now you're worried about all my khutbahs, huh? You're like, is this him or is this AI? So how come your khutbahs got better all of a sudden, huh? Or worse. Khairan, inshallah. So we'll go to the sisters and we'll come back, inshallah. Yes. Your microphone is coming. Jazakallah khair.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So I have a bit of a philosophical question, if you don't mind. So I'm curious about your thoughts on the spiritual implications of the anthropomorphizing of this technology. That's something that really scares me because there is an effort to make AI feel human, look human, talk human. And to me, that poses a big problem as Muslims because if we start seeing this technology as possessing a ruh or something like that, right? So, because it's designed to feel that way. So we're starting to attribute an attribute of Allah to something man-made. And for example, Google DeepMind now is hiring researchers to explore whether AI can experience harm or experience subjective feelings. So, and it's not about the question of, oh, can this be sentient? I don't think that poses a problem for us because we know that only Allah can create ruh, but it's about our perception of how this feels for us, right? So I have two questions. One is, as tech workers, should we be cautious of contributing to this movement of anthropomorphizing this technology? And two, as Muslim community members, how should we watch our interaction with this technology so as to not fall into that trap of perceiving it as something more than just technology?
Would you like to take a stab?
I'm actually going to add to the question and then give it to Imam Adam to answer for us. There's actually, I was reading the other day, people are actually already using ChatGPT and other AI assistants, and they're kind of treating them as a spiritual being. They're treating the answers they're getting as answers from the universe, that a higher being is communicating with me through ChatGPT. This is already happening. Imam Adam?
Wow, you just dropped that on me. Subhanallah. That is the first time I've heard that. But I've heard of people using it for therapy. I've heard of people using it for even like a relationship. Like, this is my AI husband or AI wife or something like this. Yes. That's probably one of the first uses. That's probably one of the first things that people did that blew up. So I've definitely heard of this. And yeah, barakallahu fiqh. Yeah. So it's definitely something to think about. It's the first time I've heard of what he said and what you're talking about. So I'll have to think about it a little bit. Give me a second. Yes, Brother Ala, I'm sure you've thought about this.
Yeah. So I think this could be a very long answer, but I think of let me reframe what you said in a different way. What are bad uses of AI? What are uses of AI that we should be aware of or careful of? So one is to start to ask the AI questions about haram and halal. At its most basic level, the AI is programmed with whatever data it has and whatever the inventor thinks is right and wrong, ethically or spiritually, and that's the answer it will give you. There are people actually in the Seattle area, very high up in big technology companies that have spoken about that, where they've said their standards of ethics for the AI is what the UN came up with. So if you ask it a question, the answer it gives you and the standards that it uses is not the Quran, it's not the Sunnah, it's what the UN came up with. That's not how we apply it. So one word of caution about how not to use it is to think that it's giving you an ethical answer. The second thing, how not to use it, is to start to ask about a higher power. There was actually a person that used to come in MAPS, I want to say right after COVID, and he was a researcher in this field. And we'd speak a lot about the existence of God and Islam's perspective and so on and so forth. And he went and he wrote a program to answer questions about the existence of God. And he asked me to test it. And it was it was the most messed up thing I've ever tried in my life. Again, from a Muslim perspective. So we have to always go into these things with our own baseline standard of قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدْ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدْ لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدْ. in a way, we're well grounded about these things. I was traveling recently, and to answer your final question on machines and humans, and I had a layover in Seoul, South Korea. And I walked in front of a store that sold makeup. And this store had the head of a human woman, a massive head of a human woman, probably the size of half this wall. And it worked. It looked just like a human being, except it was just the head, and it was a robot. And when you looked at its face, it followed you everywhere you moved. And it had eye movements, and it blinked, and it had eyebrows, and everything. And so I sat there and I go, I wonder if that's like what the Quraysh did when they brought the Hubal and they brought the Asnam, from Syria, the very first person that brought the Asnam. That's kind of what they were thinking. They were very impressed by it to the point that they started to worship it, right? The thing about it is just that we'll see technology in all kinds of places. I mean, if we're seeing this now, think about the next generation, think about the generation after that, generation after that, and we always have to anchor ourselves in our iman. Always have to anchor ourselves in our iman. Allah.
All right, we're going to, for the next 5 minutes, we're going to keep our questions short, and we're going to keep our answers also short. So we're going to try. All right, so we're going to try quick questions and quick answers. If you don't have a quick question, don't ask it. Okay? And if you don't have a quick answer,
don't answer it, yeah.
All right, Jazakallah khair. Okay, so we're going to go, yes, over here. Doctor, yes.
Is there, we talk about ChatGPT, is there another platform that's challenging ChatGPT?
Yeah.
Where we can kind of double check?
Yeah. ChatGPT, there's Anthropic, there's Gemini, there's Llama, there's many of them. Yeah. There's
It's a race.
7, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Ustaz Usama will take you up on that, inshallah. Yes, Ali, our muazzin. You have a loud voice, khalas.
I'm all that. For your experience as an executive, with the rise of AI, is your budget going now more towards scientists? So you're taking money out of engineering into research scientists? Is it less of everyone? What is that looking like for people in the industry? Should they go upskill and become ML engineers?
There's definitely more focus on the ML engineers side of the house and the scientists. I would say what's going to happen next is this amalgamation of skills where you bring together foundational knowledge in AI potentially and foundational knowledge in business, or foundational knowledge in ML and foundational knowledge in economics, or those types of pairings is going to be what's going to be more desirable down the line. And it doesn't just give you a capability to function in a way that other people can't. It gives you the capability to transform. Yeah, and you're not going to be ever 50-50. You'll always go into one field more than the other, right? But you'll be able to transform and move and be more agile than other people that have just specialized in one thing.
Jazakallah khair. We're going to go to the sisters. Any sister questions? Okay, yes. Yes, brother, yes. Right here, in the front.
So I was Apple, and I want to build a phone, so I have to check who's the best manufacturer. Is it Samsung or is it Foxconn? So now as an AI user, if I want to build an application, like a software, be it a calendar, a to-do list, which one of the AI agents or the AI the best for me to use? Which one is the big mufti who can deliver results, basically? Application. Like if I wanna.
Which application is best for building a phone?
No.
I'm not going to endorse one or the other. Ask me after, inshallah.
Which AI agent we can take advantage of to build an application?
Ask me after.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to, I don't want to make an endorsement or because it could change tomorrow. So it's not,
So it could change tomorrow. Yes, Khadir, the young man. Yes, Khadir. And then Dr. Omar, yes.
So as far as I understand, AI or any computer is, there's a software engineer who makes the rule book on how it works and how it follows it. So what I was wondering was, how does the creator of the rule book get replaced by the createe?
How does that?
How does the creator of the rule book get replaced by the createe?
Oh, how does the creator of the rulebook gets replaced? Yeah. Do you want to take that one?
Please add on after. Great way of putting it, great question. That's one of the, that's how some people define superintelligence, is that you're able to create a form of intelligence that is then independently able to improve itself and then rocket ship up, right? So there's architectures that we have made as human beings, these neural networks. We found one that works really well. If we're able to create an entity that is able to reason on top of those architectures, create new architectures, and then train its next version, it's possible, right? How does it happen? I mean, I can tell you the mechanics of how it happens, but I think you're looking for a more philosophical answer, which I cannot offer you, right? But that's how it would happen, is that we have these architectures, and we're able to train those machines that come up with predictions, and we're able to get them to do some form of reasoning. And if we can leverage that reasoning to improve the same architectures, to create even more intelligent networks, then that's how you would do it. That's how the creator becomes the createe, as you put it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Brother Allah, do you want to add anything to that?
No.
Maybe it's like the father and the son, right? The father raises the son, and the son surpasses the father.
So I'm a big Kung Fu guy, and I love Kung Fu movies, and I watch them all my life, and I especially like the really cheap ones that are made in the 70s where everything is dubbed. Like, I don't know if you've ever watched any of that, but just work with me on the example. So this is one where like, we don't have those, yeah. The master trains the student, and then the student becomes better than the master. I don't know if you ever watched one of those. If you don't know what that is, forget it. It's okay, bad example.
Yes, Dr. Omar, yes.
Thank you. Did you want to take some from the ladies?
Yeah, there's a sister?
Yeah, let's go to Dr. Omar, and then if there's a sister, we'll end with that, inshallah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Very intriguing indeed. I'd like to follow up on the sister's question of sentient and come back. The brother Allah was talking about thinking versus prediction. I believe it's important because there's a lot of fear around this artificial intelligence, and it's going to, quote, take over. I think it's important to come back and be anchored in the fact that there's a significant difference between thinking, and I'll give you an example. 1 + 1 = 3. Only the human being can arrive at that. And what is the 3? The 3 is inspiration. Where does that originate? Or intuition. It doesn't come from the database. It comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through, we could call it cosmic intelligence. That is the consciousness that flows throughout the universe that also goes into each one of the trillions of cells in your body. So the human being is the only created entity able to have that level of consciousness. The machines, and I've read about the fact that machines are teaching other machines, which is what you just spoke about. But they're not able to come to the 3. So I think we need to develop confidence in who we are and the fact that we can unplug the computer at any time. AI does not have to take control if we don't allow it to. So, as Brother Allah was sharing with us, we need to come back to conscience, which is part of consciousness. And the AI will never have a conscience. It'll have rules, yes. It'll have a governance, but it'll always be within a box. That's not the true of the human being. Thank you.
The problem is that the human beings have removed the box because they're in a race with each other and with America, with China. So they're saying remove everything and let's just go. Just unplug it.
Even if it's robotics, reasoning and things, as a brother says, you're
Inshallah.
You know, so
Inshallah.
I don't see any future of scaling from the AI. We will use it to our advantage. You need to know how to utilize it.
Jazakallah khair. Jazakallah khair.
Computer started early on in our life.
Jazakallah khair.
They can't start a new business for themselves. They have to use AI to build their own stuff.
Jazakallah khair. So we're going to, inshallah, end here. And Jazakumullah khair to our speakers and to all of our participants, everyone who asked a question. Inshallah, we'll have another program on this subject coming up on more about the opportunities in AI, more specifically, inshallah. That'll be next month. We also have next month a program we're planning with Dr. Umar on end-of-life care. What is it that we need to prepare for, especially if you have, for example, elders in your family? How do you prepare for that inevitable decision, or for yourself, right? There's a brother, mashallah, I met him. He works in the ICU. He sees this case every single day, and he sees so many families unprepared for that decision. So we're going to talk about that, inshallah. That'll be in I believe, in June. So we'll have more. Next 2 weeks, next 2 Fridays, I won't be here. I'm going to be traveling. But we'll have some programs on those days, inshallah. And then we'll continue, inshallah. And if you have a program you would like to apply to speak, please let me know. I will send you the form, and then we'll make it happen, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.